All right, let's go. Welcome to Man Up Friday with me, your host, Mike, your mentor. Thank you for being with me. I'm excited. This is the second half of Authentic Manhood, where we start to close in on what it means to be a man, and we really start to chisel down and get a working definition of manhood, something that you can not only have for yourself, but you can pass on to your sons and to start really building that legacy for those who are going to come after you. A wise person once said, "A legacy is not the things that you leave behind for others, but it's the things that you leave in others when you're gone." So I'm going to skip the intro of who I am tonight. You can find all that stuff on this page if you're new to the page. But all you need to know is that I got a calling on my life to just call men to a higher standard of living than what's going on in the world today. That doesn't make me better than you. That doesn't make me better than anybody. It's just something that's been in my heart for a long time, and I ignored it for a long time. I ran away from that responsibility and for what God was calling me to. Come from a broken home. My story is somewhat crazy, but all that is on this page. And I do this to just try to encourage brothers to step their game up, right? It's not easy being a man. No one said it was going to be. But somewhere along the way, for a lot of reasons, we've lost our way as men. And the world is the way it is because of what the lack of responsibility we've taken as men over the things that we've been given in our lives, over the opportunities, over our family, over our children, over the relationships that we have in the community. So every Friday night we gather here to go over this stuff right here, The Quest for Authentic Manhood by Dr. Robert M. Lewis. So this is not my material, this is his, and I'm just sharing it with you because this changed my life, and I will never forget this stuff. And the more people I can share these types of things with, the better it's going to be. So let it speak to your heart. Grab a pen and a paper so you can take a note or jot something down that God impresses upon you, or maybe that you can relate to, because, oh, hold on one second. Had to open the door there, but I'm back. Yeah, so make sure you are jotting this down because it's going to have an impact on your life and change it, just like it did mine when I was lost and didn't really know who I was, didn't really know what I was going to do, didn't know if I wanted to be married, didn't know what I wanted to do with myself. I mean, I was just in a hole, and I just needed somebody to kind of just reach down alongside me and say, "Hey, I got you. We're gonna get this through this together." And that's what this was for me. It opened my mind to so many things that I never had any idea about, because you don't learn this thing in school. You don't learn this stuff in college. Uh, you know, my experience has been the only way that you find this stuff out is if you're actively out looking for it, which usually means you've hit some kind of wall, or you don't know where to turn, or through whatever you want to ascribe to it, through the mysteries of the universe or to God shining down on you. He brings it to you because he wants to show you something. And this stuff is wisdom right here. I don't care what your belief system is. I don't care what your worldview is. Wisdom is wisdom. It knows no bias. It has no prejudice. Doesn't care how tall you are, how much money you make, what the color of your skin is. It doesn't. It's good stuff. So if you approach this with an open mind and let it speak to you for what it is, I truly believe that it'll change your life. So we're going to jump into this tonight, get you in and get you out of here on this holiday weekend. Hope you guys all had a good 4th of July. So let's dive in here. Share my screen. Every time it says that. Okay, so this section that we're going to journey into here the next 2 weeks is called Genesis and Manhood, and this is part one of this. So here we go. All right, so first we have what's called the Genesis myth, and what I should say, Dr. Lewis speaks about when he says myth. He believes, or he says, a myth is not synonymous with fiction, and what that means is that a real myth explains and measures our reality in the world. Webster's dictionary defines it as any real or fictitious story that appeals to the consciousness of people by embodying their ideals or realities. And the myth of Genesis explains and measures manhood, both in its original ideas. Hey, can you turn that off, please? Thanks. The myth of Genesis explains and measures manhood, both in its original ideals and in its ongoing fallenness. And Genesis describes our ancestral roots. And the way that this is going to work here is we've actually gone over the first part, but I got this little illustration for you. So first, what we just went over is we just took a wide look at this approach, and then over the next session here tonight, or this next part, and then the session next week, we're going to begin to close in on this and draw a more tight focus around manhood and the beginnings and all that good stuff. So let's dive into the meat and potatoes here. So hope that's big enough for you guys. What Genesis 1 says about manhood. And it speaks of male and female value, and I just want to read this to you here real quick so you don't have to look it up. But Genesis 1:26 through 27 says, "Then God said, let us make mankind in our own image and our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. So the first thing is it speaks of the image and likeness of God. He alone bears this image, and he's given it to us. The second thing that more specifically, right? So we've been given a consciousness, we've been given a will, we've been given reasoning, and we've been given self-determination. And there's responsibilities that come along with that. No other species, no other creatures on earth have been given these things. And then the second thing that these verses speak about are both are equally endowed and equally valuable. That's male and female, regardless of the physical differences. As we look at that verse, they've both been given these things, and they're both viewed in God's eyes as equally valuable. 3, we've been given a unique and special relationship with God. God is calling us right into relationship. This isn't religion where we're following a set of rules and we're doing something trying to earn favor. This is an actual relationship where our Creator wants to come and wants to know us on a deeper level and wants to walk with us in our daily lives. The other thing is that Genesis and manhood speaks of the male and female calling. Just want to read something else to you a minute here. So verse 28, God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground. An interesting thing about that one verse is there's actually 3 instructions found in that verse. And those three instructions are what speaks to the calling of every man and woman. And the first one is be fruitful and multiply and to fill the earth, right? It's our job to procreate and to pass on what we know to the next generation. And there's a tremendous amount of responsibility in that. Two, it's we're supposed to subdue the earth, which basically means wherever you go, you do the best with what you have, right? We've all been given different gifts, and with those different gifts come the same responsibility, and that's to use them to the best of our ability to develop them and cultivate them. And then three, the third instruction is to rule over the earth, and that is to for us as humans to be good stewards over the earth and its resources. And personally, I don't get into a lot of global warming and all that type of stuff. To me, this just speaks about our responsibility to use what we've been given, right? To honor this planet that we live in, that we live on, whatever that means, from the basicness of not littering and picking up things to using the natural resources wisely, and using those, wisely. I guess there's no other way to say that. Be a good steward. And then this is where we find the calling of man in these three things, right? So this is the original calling. These three things: be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, subdue the earth, and to rule over the earth. And the funny thing is that this hints at a very important social structure that I've talked about before on this page, and I think it's worth repeating before we sign off for the night. And that's headship versus leadership. Headship is a calling and a responsibility. Leadership is a gifting. And if you've been around for any time, you know that there are a lot of strong women, and they've been given a gift of leadership. But at the same time, men, even if we have a strong gift of leadership or we don't have a strong gift of leadership, we're called to headship. And a good picture of that, which I've shared before, comes from the movie Fury. And in the movie Fury, Brad Pitt plays a tank commander, and he's leading this group of tanks through Germany on this mission. Now, he rides in the first tank as the tank commander, and then there's a second tank and a third tank. Now, in this one scene in the movie, they go into this town, and it's basically like a trap or a setup. They get ambushed, right? And so when that happens, it's the job of the first tank to draw all of the fire so that the second and the third tank can get away if they need to, or can maneuver into shooting position, all that type of stuff. So I bring that up because that's a picture of headship and the calling that we as men have, right? It's our responsibility to take the fire for our families, right? To take the fire in the situations that we've been placed in this relationship. And notice that's totally different than leadership, right? It's a sacrificial role. It's a role where it doesn't necessarily have to be fair. No one said that it's going to be fair, but we take that responsibility and that role on because that's what we're called to. We're called to this higher standard as husbands, as fathers, as leaders in our community, right? So someone can have strong leadership, right? A woman can be gifted with strong leadership, but she's not called, according to the Bible, to be the head of the home. A man is called to be the head of the home, and with that comes a lot of responsibility. And as I stated in the beginning of this, the world is the way it is because men have refused to accept that responsibility on a lot of different levels. And until we're willing to change that and teach others what that looks like the generations that came before us, and get back to those principles and get back to sharing those things. Uh, we're not going to be able to fix the world outside of our windows and all this chaos and madness that's going on. So that's it for tonight. I appreciate you guys being with me and sharing in this with me. Next week we're going to dive into part 2 and talk some more about manhood and from the origins of Genesis, as we really drill down and focus on these things. So I hope you guys have a good night, and we will see you next week. Next week. Well, and we'll see you tomorrow for the Shout Out Saturday. Bye.